Welcome to episode 53 of Hanging by a Thin Thread. I'm Shelley and this is Ruby. We're coming to you from the Kansas City area, and we've been away for a while, but I wanted to come back and report back on a lot of the things that have been going on in our world. We are a podcast that talks about knittings, crochet, spinning, weaving, occasionally sewing. We have a lot of different interests. And so we wanted to come back to you and report back on what all has been going on. It's been a crazy, really, truly crazy several weeks. And when I last left you, it was right around Christmas time. But I was trying to work on my sister's gift shawl of the Golden Hour Shawl, and I hadn't quite finished that yet. And I had a lot of plans. My word for the year was going to be re-inspire, because I was going to use my retirement to do a lot of amazing creative projects with my, all my crafts. I thought I was going to really set the world on fire. But I had a lot of the beginning of the year ground to a halt because I was helping my mom move into an assisted living. First, we had to pick out the right community for her. And then, as it turned out, it was a lot more involved than we thought, and we had to, do a lot of, from our old apartment, getting rid of stuff from the old apartment, moving into the new one, and getting her adjusted. It's just been a lot, and we're still not completely finished with emptying out the old apartment, but it's a process, and I do see finally a light at the end of the tunnel now. So I have hope that things will turn around, and I'll be able to spend more time on some of my creative projects, and let you know more about that and see what happens with that. But I was beginning to think that my word for the year was never going to happen because, a lot of things have gone on, a lot of crazy things that have demanded my time and attention. But at any rate, we're hoping that turns around. Now, to tell you the reason that I named this particular podcast Sailor Slippers Shipwrecked. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But before I do, I want to point out what I'm wearing. I am wearing the Totally Tubular Turtleneck by Parks William. And I want to get my notes on this to tell you a little bit more detail, because it's been 2 years since I originally knit this. I finished it back in March of 2024. But it knit up very quickly in like 4 weeks, which for me is a very fast knit. I used a size 9 and size 10 needle. The sweater was made with 2 different yarns. I used the Hobie Fluffy Day yarn combined and held with the Hobie Diablo, which is the kind of fake mohair. And I knit those 2 together. It made this beautiful tweedy pink fabric, which I really was happy with, and I like a turtleneck. So it's just a really comfortable turtleneck. And I wear this a lot. In the 2 years since I finished making this, I have worn it a great deal. So I wanted to just say, what a great project. It only took 3 skeins of yarn, so a total of 936 yards. The yards were very generous with the Hobie. So I really would recommend this project. And there are a variety of yarns you can use to make it with, but I like the Fluffy Day quite a bit and combined with the Diablo. So I would definitely do that again. I think it was a good choice and made making this really affordable. Now I'll talk about something else I'm wearing real quick. This is the Band-Aid that I have at the end of my nose that you may or may not have noticed. But I'm wearing that because I had a little run-in with skin cancer, and that's another thing that's been taking up my time and attention. We've had several medical issues in my family that have arisen that also took up a lot of time and attention this winter. It's been really a rough winter for us. So my husband had some skin cancer that was being removed from his top of his head, and while I was there during his procedure, which is called a Mohs procedure, I happened to mention to the dermatologist that I was having a little pimple that kept popping up on my nose and wouldn't totally go away. And so I asked her, is this any problem? Is this an issue at all, or is it okay? And she said, well, let me just do a quick little biopsy of it. She thought it was okay, but she wanted to make sure. And so she got back with me the next day, her staff did, to tell me that, it actually wasn't okay. It was a squamous cell carcinoma. So I needed to have it removed fairly quickly. So anyway, they did a procedure, again, the Mohs procedure, but on mine they had to do a skin graft by taking some skin off my neck and grafting onto my nose, because there was a little bit of a hollow there where they had to remove the skin cancer. So I just wanted to mention, as a kind of a public service announcement, if any of you have any kind of skin issue that you're not sure about, whether it's a mole that looks weird or even a pimple that doesn't go away, any kind of weird discoloration of the skin or anything, texture, any kind of rough patch that looks different, then please do bring it to your doctor's or dermatologist's attention, because this can be really serious. I didn't take skin cancer very seriously for myself, since I very seldom go out in the sun. I'm not a sunbather and never have been. I didn't think it would be a problem I would ever have. As a child, I think I know I played a lot outside, and I enjoyed playing outside. So I probably didn't have, in the 1960s, the best skin protection. I'm sure I didn't use sunblock very much. And so, this partially could come from a long time ago, but whatever happened, whether it was in the past or whatever it is, it causes skin cancer. I know that it can be very serious, and this has really awakened my awareness of it. So I want to mention it to you as well, in case any of you might want to have a check yourself. I'm also going to start using sunblock religiously all throughout the year, anytime I go out, even to walk the dog, and I'm going to wear a sun hat. I've ordered a sun hat, and it should be here any day now, but I do want to really do better sun protection. So I want to mention that and hope that you guys will take it to heart. I covered my little wound with Band-Aids because I'm a little bit self-conscious about it yet, but I know it's going to take several months to totally heal, and just trying to, again, be patient. There's that word that keeps coming up. I'm not a patient person, so I'm going to have to be patient, though, with my own healing on this, and gosh, I hope that doesn't become the theme for this year. I'm hoping Re-Inspire is a lot more appealing to me, but I'm going to have to be patient. Now, I want to get right to the thing I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, my sailor slippers. The sailor slippers are ones that have been very popular for quite a while, for several months. They probably started off in popularity not only because it's a well-written pattern, and I'm going to put up the name of who designed it here on the screen, but not only is it a well-written pattern, but it also is really cute in terms of the striping. Having the contrasting colors for the striping was appealing. And I did felting many years ago. When I first started knitting, like over 20 years ago, I right away got into felting. One of my first projects, actually, was felting a pair of slippers for Bob for his birthday. And it was really fun, a fun project. Back then they were called felted clogs. And I didn't know how to do short rowing. And in that particular pattern, which still is available, and I'm going to put a link up for that old pattern too, it was really popular at the time, the felted clogs. I'd seen them made at my local knitting shop. They had them on display, and right away when I saw those clogs, I thought this would be an ideal pair of slippers for my husband, and something he would actually wear, because a lot of my knitting, he doesn't like to wear hot sweaters or socks, so most knitting projects don't really appeal to him, but I knew that as much as he loved to wear slippers, that these would be a hit. So at the time, those felted clogs I made them for him, and I had to actually spend a whole day up in the knitting store, my local knit shop, Knitcraft, because I was having trouble getting the pattern right. I went up to the knit store and spent the whole day at the knit store. From 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, I took a day off work to make sure I had the concept down. And Rita, who worked at the store, not only let me sit there all day at the knitting table, but she even shared some of her potato soup with me for lunch that she had in the crock pot. And we sat there all day, off and on. She would check in on me, making sure I understood the short rowing technique. But at any rate, those felted clogs turned out beautifully, and I'm going to put a picture up here to show you the old clogs that I made for him. And then when this new pattern came out, the sailor slippers, I was really excited. I thought this is a new, wonderful way to make the slippers that I made many years ago, and I want to try this new pattern. I want to make the stripes. So I went back to Knitcraft, my favorite knitting store, and got my purple yarn and some lavender, as well as some yellow for a contrast. I had been thinking about lime, but I ended up going with yellow. And so I went right home that afternoon, cast on, started working on them, and the knitting was very easy. It went according to the pattern, and it even had great video instruction links in the pattern that you could use to help you understand anything that might be confusing. And on this pattern, you start with the heel construction, then you move to the top of the slipper from the wider part clear to the end to the tip of the toe, and then you add on the contrast color to make the sole, and the sole goes from the tip of the toe back to the heel. So they're attached. And when you're finished with all of that, then you end up mattress stitching the clog closed slipper. I keep calling it a clog, but it's a slipper. And then mine ended up, because I used a size 11 needle as called for in the pattern, I forgot the fact that I'm a loose knitter. I did not do a gauge swatch, so I ended up with a 13-inch slipper. And I'm going to put a picture up here of how mine ended up. Now, I thought these are really huge, but felting would solve the problem. I wasn't too worried because I knew how to do felting. And to do felting, what is required is hot water. You can sometimes shock it even more with alternating hot and cold water. You need soap, and you need abrasion. So by washing it at my top-loading washing machine with some jeans in the wash load, I thought this is going to be no problem to get these to felt. Down from the size 13, the 13 length, 13 inch, down to a size, or down to an 8.5 size. Because my foot is small and it's narrow. Well, that was wrong. And that's how my sailing slippers adventures got shipwrecked. Because I had these slippers that when I first put them in the wash with the blue jeans on a hot and cold setting in my top-loading washing machine, I washed them and they only shrunk like half an inch. Not hardly at all. In fact, at first I didn't think they shrunk at all. But I had the measuring tape next to the washer machine, and I did see that they shrank a little bit. The stitch definition was still there. It didn't look hardly felted at all. So I washed them several more times. I lost count. I think 3 or 4 more times. And each time, they finally did start shrinking a little bit, but not nearly what I needed. I mean, they were like 12 inches. Then they finally shrunk down on the 3rd or 4th wash to 11 inches, but I still was having them way too big. There was no way. And I also noticed the stitch definition on the top of the shoe were still, you could see each stitch. They weren't felted together like the fabric should be. The bottom of the fabric was felting together, but the top wasn't. And it got me so worried that at one point I even went back to my yarn label, looked at the yarn labels to make sure that I had indeed bought regular Cascade 220 and not accidentally bought superwash, because it just was such a problem. It wasn't felting. And it was correct. I did have Cascade 220 yarn, and I know that that's 100% Peruvian wool, and it does felt. I'd used it before in other projects years ago when I made bags and hats and everything else. So I knew it felted. It wasn't the yarn's fault. It was my fault. And I just kept doing the washing. Finally, on like the 5th try, I got so disgusted. I took them out of the washing machine, brought them up to my sink in the bathroom, and I heated up my electric kettle that makes hot water for like tea and stuff like that. I heated it up, put some soap in the water, and I poured this hot water, used the soap and a washcloth to scrub the top of these slippers to make them kind of get roughed up enough that the wool would cling to each other. And then I took ice cold water, poured it on top, and again did the rubbing of the slipper to try to get it to start felting. And I even at one point went out to the hardware store, bought a toilet plunger, because I remembered from years ago that you could plunge the object that you were working on and to felt it. Some people do that with all kinds of different, felting and all that. So I actually even tried that. And finally, with all of that effort, I finally was able to get this down, to get one slipper down to 11 inches and one down to 10.5. So there was a half inch difference. So I then took the one that was bigger and I did it some more. And so I did this bathroom sink method probably 2 or 3 times before I finally got it down to where I had it at 9 inches. I knew I still needed it to be shrunk down an extra half inch. And so finally, with doing all that one more time in the washing machine downstairs and with the jeans, I was finally able to get both of the slippers to the needed size of 8.5 inches. I'm going to now show you how they ended up. And reach here. Sorry, Ruby. But these are the finished, you see them? These are the finished slippers. Finally, I got them done. They were felted. The top still, you can see a little bit of stitch definition, but not too badly. It pretty much made a cohesive fabric like it's supposed to. And they are 8.5 inches. Now, at the final thing, you are supposed to put them on and wear them around for a while so they shape around your foot. But I still found that because my instep is so narrow, that I found I needed to stitch a little bit there with some sewing thread on both sides to cinch them in a little bit more so they don't flop off the end of the heel. I do find that the end of the heel is fairly not very tall. So if I were to do this again, like in making bob slippers, I think I would make the height at the back a little bit taller so they don't slip off easily. But now that I've cinched them in, for me, this does fit, and I will wear them. But I just will say, most of you will not have this problem. You may have the opposite problem. Most people have to be very careful in felting to check the wash and make sure they don't shrink too much, okay? But these, I think from reading other people's comments on their YouTube videos of making these, I do think they're a little bit wide, and I do think I should have gone with the smaller size needle. I will, next time I make these for Bob, he wants some in brown and beige. I'm going to make his with using the size 9 needle because I have a very loose knitter, and I don't want the stitch definition to be so big like they were on mine. And I'm going to carefully check his. Hopefully his will turn out better and I won't have the same problem. But I did have a lot more problem felting these than I thought I would. And I do, my best guess, do believe that it's because I knit them too loose. So let me know if you've made these yet and what experience you had. But I will caution those of you that are going to make these, don't make either mistake. You don't want them to, you do want to keep checking them in the wash to make sure they don't overfelt. But you also might have to do some things if you're having problems with them. I do think putting them in the wash basin upstairs made a big difference and helped me finally get them shrunk down to size. So I was able to take a Shipwreck and save the day. I was able to make them wearable and salvageable at the end. Next, I want to talk a little bit more about the Golden Hour Shawl that I made for my sister. And I actually recorded this little segment before my nose surgery. So back when I was finishing it up in early January, I want to just play a little clip of that because I really love that shawl project. It was excellent. I would highly recommend it to anyone that is wanting a nice cushy shawl. And because you knit it on a fairly large needle, it works up quickly. And I'm going to just, the rest of it I think is already in the clip I'm going to show you. But I want to play a little clip of how that turned out. I told you about it a while back that I was going to make this. And it took me a month, but I was able to do it. And I want to tell you a little bit about it and why I love it so much, because this is one I'd like to make for myself in the future as well. It's a really easy shawl if you're new to lace knitting. It has several techniques, but it presents them in an easy-to-learn way. So you have these little crosses that are mosaic. You have some bobble stitches, and you use either 3 or 4 colors. I chose to use Superwash. I use Cascade 220 Superwash, and I use the cream color, the rust color, which is a Japanese maple, and the charcoal, and finally I ended with the burgundy. And all of these colors are coordinated with the cream. The reason I use Superwash is so that this would be more easily washable for my sister, because she's not a knitter, and so I just want to make this easy to care for. But I did block it, and I also used lifelines in between each section. So that way, if you get messed up, you can rely on that lifeline to get you back on target again and go back to it. So one thing I want to mention, you see at the bottom here, the border turned out very nice, and it's very holey. Has a lot of that double lace there at the bottom. But one concern I had when I was finishing the shawl was that the bottom edge there flipped up quite a bit, the bind off. And I'll show you a picture of how it was flipping up. And I was pretty worried about it, so I undid the bind off, and I used a larger needle to bind off. I went up one size to bind off with a looser needle, and then I blocked it, which I do with all my shawls. And how I did it was I washed it in this power scour. It was the first time I'd used power scour. I used both the shampoo and conditioner, and I really was happy with, that's the first time I used it, and I like it a lot. So I would advise, always blocking your shawls, because obviously once I blocked it, just as I thought, it blocked right out. I had no problem with the flipping edge after that. But another thing I used for this that I think is helpful, if you are making a shawl or a sweater with several colors like this, where you have the cream and then you have that dark rust and the dark burgundy, I think having this, I use the Shout brand, but I don't think it matters. But using color catcher in the water, I put one of these squares of the color catcher in the sink when I washed it. I soaked it, and the color catcher, I put 2 of them in, and they did soak up some brownish, reddish color into the color catcher. So I think that saved the cream and kept it pristine. So I would suggest if you're using strong colors, especially if they're in the red family, that it is a good idea to use a color catcher as you're washing the shawl. But I was very happy with how it turned out. In addition to opening up the lace, which it always does when you do a wash like that, I also noticed that it grew from 55 inches in wingspan to 77, and it was supposed to do that. That was about the projected size. And then down the spine, where it had been 21 inches, it grew to 30 inches. So I love this shawl. I think it is a great project. And the way we came about with the colors, my mom and I, because I didn't grow up with Teresa, we grew up apart separately, I had an idea that she liked autumnal colors, but I wanted to be sure by looking at her Facebook page So we looked at her Facebook page to see what kind of colors she often liked to wear. And that's how I came up with these particular colors. I knew she would want a neutrally shawl that she could wear with a lot of different things, but it also should have an autumn kind of feel to it. So I think we accomplished this with the colors that we chose, and I'm very happy with the results. So the Golden Hour Shawl is a large triangular shawl, and if you want to take a review of how you could wear a shawl, if you look back on episode 3, I stand in front of a mirror and show myself trying on shawls and wearing them several different ways. So if you would like a review of how you might wear a shawl like this, feel free to take a peek at episode 3. One thing I want to do more of this year, I'm afraid to make, after the way my year started, you guys, I'm really afraid to make too many, real specific plans. Because like a lot of people say when they retire, oh, I thought I'd have all this time in the day, and instead, the time just flew and I got nothing done. Well, I wouldn't say that. I have been getting a lot done, but it just hasn't been in the creative aspect. So I haven't been able to do as many of my crafts as I normally have in the past. So I hope this turns around, but I don't want to over plan. I want to have the flexibility to do things that are unexpected, like the sailor slippers. I really enjoyed doing those in spite of the shipwreck. And even if they hadn't gone back on course, I still would have enjoyed the project. It was a fast, fun project. And I want to have a lot of time this year to do the unplanned, the unexpected things. So I'm not going to give you a whole list of my top 10 things I hope to make. I don't even want to do that. That's just like tempting fate. Instead, though, I will tell you one thing I want to do more of this year is to make vests. And I have this yarn I just picked up. It's called Tula Tweed. Louisa Harding is the brand. And I do love tweedy yarns always. And so I do hope to do more vest making. I have been listening to a podcaster, and what is her name? Knitting for the People, I think. But anyway, she comes out of Australia. And I've been wanting to make vests, because she was talking about how she loves vests, and I always have loved vests. So I really want to make more of them. And this particular yarn I picked up at Knitcraft, and I do have a pattern I think I'm going to use, but I haven't started it yet. And so I want to, I'll tell you next time if I decided to go with that one or a different one. I have a couple ones I'm thinking about. But I want to make a vest, and I do want to use this beautiful variegated tweed yarn. It is, gosh, it has a lot of yardage on it, 382 yards per skein. So I think with 3 balls, I may be able to make a large or extra large. And I did do a gauge swatch this time. I learned from my mistake with the slippers. I did do a gauge swatch. And surprisingly on this one, I am right on track with I started with the smaller needle, but this particular pattern I'm thinking about doing is, I actually ended up with the size called for on the pattern. So that surprised me. But at any rate, I love this yarn. I do intend to make at least one vest this year, and maybe more, depending on how things end up panning out. But I do love vests, and I want to work on them. That's something high on my list. I also have plans to soon start on a spring top. I want to use the Treasure Goddess yarn that I picked up a while back. It's been quite a while, at one of Treasure Goddess's yarn parties. I got this beautiful orchid yarn, and I'm going to definitely have plans to make a spring top, like a short sleeve top. And I'll be starting that probably right after I do the vest. But I do have some plans coming up. I just don't want to overplan and ruin the spontaneity of whatever appeals to me, because I very much want to have passion rule what picks I do end up knitting on. So I will tell you later more about the vest, but I am going to cast that on today. And, we'll narrow down which pattern I'm going to go with. So anyway, that will be something I will probably talk about next time. Well, we are about the end of what I have to talk about. I am very happy you came back with me. I know I've been gone for a while, and hopefully we'll be back sooner and share with you any of the projects that I'm working on. But until then, love what you're making and wear what you make. Till next time. Bye now.